It begins on a dark night.
It is human nature to tell stories.
Once upon a time.
So it should come as no surprise that some of our favorite characters are also storytellers.
My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates.
They relay their own narratives while they themselves take part in a larger story. How do these stories within stories work? And why are they more common than you may think?
Let's see then, where to begin?
This is What is a Frame Narrative? Before we start telling our own story, subscribe to StudioBinder and click the bell to stay updated on all our videos. Let's begin our tale. A frame narrative, also known as a sandwich narrative, intercalation, or frame story, is a narrative that contains one or more distinct stories within it. This inner story is called an embedded narrative, or more simply, a story within a story, and they are often narrated by a character established in the outer story. Multiple layers of stories within stories are typically called nested stories. These types of narratives have existed since the earliest written works. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the protagonist's exploits are relayed to the gods. Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales are told by each pilgrim along their journey to a shrine. Frame narratives can often operate as a structuring device, allowing for two or more stories to progress congruently. The multiple stories can play off each other, emphasizing themes or creating suspense. In order for frame narratives to work, a storyteller needs to pay careful attention to how the embedded narratives intertwine, and make sure one doesn't deflate the tension of the other. We'll dive deeper into why stories within stories are used, and how to write them. But first, let's look at different types of frame narratives. Frame narratives are typically laid out in two ways. They can start and end a story, or be interwoven throughout a runtime. One of the most common types of frame stories is the bookend.
Henry Sugar was 41 years old, unmarried and rich. He was rich.
This is where a character is introduced in a prologue as the narrator, and return in the epilogue to close the narrative.
And that is what I have done.
In 2013's The Great Gatsby, Baz Luhrmann departs from the structure of the famous novel, creating a bookend frame by introducing the audience to Nick Carraway in a psychiatric hospital, long after the events of the main narrative.
When I came back from New York, I was disgusted.
This type of frame narrative typically employs flashbacks, since the character is often recalling past events. We see this in Titanic, where a modern-day discovery prompts Rose to recall her experiences on the ship. This approach allows James Cameron to remind the audience that the infamous tragedy isn't such a distant history.
This was fine.
And emphasizes how important what happened on that ship was to Rose. But frame narratives don't have to be characters' recollections. There is also the in-story media embedded narrative.
There were once three brothers who were traveling along.
These are pieces of media that exist within the story world that have their own narrative. In Drive My Car, this is the Anton Chekhov play Uncle Vanya, which is performed throughout the film.
あの女の低粛さが鉄頭鉄尾前かしだからさ。
Frame narratives are also prevalent in documentaries and mockumentaries, which will often take place over two timelines, with talking heads in the present and the events of interest in the past. This is Spinal Tap uses this approach to simultaneously tell the story of the band's meteoric rise, while also depicting their present-day fall from popularity.
The review you had on Shark Sandwich, which was merely a two-word review, just said, "Shh, sandwich.
Where'd they print that? Where'd they print that?
That's not real, is it?
You can't print that.
Narratively ambitious stories may tell nested stories. Stories within stories within stories. This can allow a writer to play even more with the form and create a multi-layered and complex storyline. Adaptation is an example of this form, using multiple layers of stories to destabilize the narrative. Frame narratives can be used to tie together a series of stories.
Well, it's quite a story. That was my third incarceration.
You've been trapped in a bottle 3 times.
I may be a djinn, but I'm also a fool.
In 3,000 Years of Longing, the Jinn tells multiple stories from his long existence. This structure allows George Miller and co-writer Augusta Gore to investigate themes of love and desire in different contexts.
A djinn has all the time in the world.
Aren't you the lucky one?
Maybe.
Now, let's look at the functions of a frame narrative. Frame stories create opportunities for narrative juxtaposition that can serve a multitude of purposes. First and foremost, the device lets storytellers experiment with structure, laying out arcs non-linearly and creating tension where there otherwise might not be any. The frame narrative in Citizen Kane serves both of these functions. The framing story begins with Kane's death. We see what he has become, and now we want to see how we got here. The device also creates narrative tension, creating a mystery, the meaning of Rosebud, that wouldn't be there without the framing.
Here's a man that could have been president, who was as loved and hated and as talked about as any man in our time. But when he comes to die, he's got something on his mind called Rosebud. Now, what does that mean?
A racehorse he bet on one.
Telling stories within stories can also help a filmmaker build on that movie's themes. Typically, the theme has to do with storytelling itself. Screenwriter John Truby notes, "By placing all actions within the storytelling frame, you make storytelling the primary action and the great accomplishment." Asteroid City uses the in-story media framing device to investigate a big question. How does art allow us to cope with real emotions? The film has multiple nested narratives, following a documentary about a play, the play itself, and some scenes outside of either device. These layers let Wes Anderson look at the nature of performance and storytelling itself.
I feel lost.
Good.
He's such a wounded guy. I feel like my heart is getting broken, my own personal heart, every night.
Good.
Do I just keep doing it?
Yes.
Without knowing anything?
Yes.
Isn't there supposed to be some kind of an answer out there in the cosmic wilderness? Woodrow's line about the meaning of life.
Maybe there is one.
Right. Well, that's my question. I still don't understand the play.
Doesn't matter.
Frame narratives are also well suited for unreliable narrators. In other words, the character telling the story may not be trustworthy. This is famously used to create a twist ending in The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. The narrator Francis tells the story of a deranged hypnotist who uses a sleepwalker to commit murders. But in the end, Francis is revealed to be a patient at the asylum, and the horrific tale he's told is his own delusion. Similarly, embedded stories can show us different perspectives from different characters. Rashomon uses a frame narrative to depict a crime according to multiple characters, highlighting that each person's perspective creates discrepancies. This phenomenon is now referred to as the Rashomon effect. As Rashomon shows us, embedded narratives can also reflect a character's interiority, how they view the world, and how they feel about it. Birdman uses an in-story media embedded narrative to reflect its protagonist's inner workings. Riggin is directing an adaptation of What We Talk About When We Talk About Love.
Not even here.
the themes of which are an expression of Riggan's own tumultuous relationships.
You're the one who doesn't exist. You're doing this because you're scared to death, like the rest of us, that you don't matter. And you know what? You're right. You don't. It's not important, okay? You're not important. Get used to it.
We now understand the many forms frame narratives can take, and why a storyteller may use them. But how do you write a frame narrative? By their very nature, stories within stories are structurally ambitious, so a screenwriter will want to lay them out with clarity. One way to do this is with scene headings and character cues.
I call him Mama Ji, my father's best friend, my swimming guru.
We can see this in David McGee's screenplay for Life of Pi. He labels the Pi telling the story as Adult Pi, which allows him to differentiate between the younger Pi character and the Pi who is narrating the story. Additionally, McGee adds dates to the scene headings that are not set in the present. This makes clear which scenes belong to which story. A writer must also choose how to transition between stories. This can be a delicate decision. Truby notes that no matter what, a storyteller calls attention to himself and can distance the audience from the story. This gives you, the writer, the benefit of detachment. Too many transitions between the stories may distract an audience, and too few may make the structure feel tacked on. In The Princess Bride, transitions between embedded and framed narratives use detachment deliberately, creating levity in more suspenseful moments.
Oh, no. No, please.
What is it? What's the matter?
They're kissing again. Do we have to hear the kissing part?
Someday you may not mind so much.
Skip onto the fire swamp. That sounded good.
Oh. You're sick? I'll humor you. So now where were we? Yeah. Oh, okay.
Is there anybody going to listen?
When creating a frame narrative, a writer has to decide who will tell the story within a story. This may be a protagonist, a side character, or characters completely outside the main narrative.
The reason for Hugo Stiglitz's celebrity among German soldiers is simple. As a German enlisted man, he killed 13 Gestapo officers.
As Forrest Gump shows us, having a protagonist tell their own story allows a filmmaker to show the world through their eyes.
Mama said they'd take me anywhere. She said they was my magic shoes.
All right, Forrest.
Forrest tells his fantastical life story in a matter-of-fact way, making him all the more endearing since he remains humble despite his life's incredible accomplishments.
Are you telling me you're the owner of the Bubba Gump Shrimp Corporation?
Yes, sir. We got more money than Davy Crockett.
Boy, I heard some whoppers in my time, but that tops them all. We were sitting next to a millionaire.
Having a side character narrate a nested narrative, meanwhile, is great when you want to mythologize the protagonist or present them as truly unknowable. This can be found in The Grand Budapest Hotel. The author who begins telling the story has no direct connection to the primary narrative of the film. He relays his conversation with Mr. Mustafa, who then tells his life story. By building these frames around the core story, Wes Anderson emphasizes how big Mr. Mustafa's legend has grown and how it has touched multiple generations. Alternatively, there may be no character narrating the nested story. This allows for the stories within stories to be completely disconnected from each other, inviting the audience to draw comparisons between two seemingly unrelated narratives. In I Saw the TV Glow, Jane Schoenbrunn uses the series arc of a fictional television show to mirror the structure of the protagonist's life.
I don't even have my learner's permit yet.
How can I have a destiny?
For a frame narrative to be effective, a writer must have a reason for using it. In Big Fish, writer John August uses a story within a story to inform both the characters and themes of the movie. Will is exhausted by his dad's tall tales.
Soon-to-be mother of my child was now lost in the gut of an uncatchable fish.
But over the course of the film, he learns that there is a truth to them, even if it's not literal.
See, most men, they'll tell you stories straight through. It won't be complicated, but it won't be interesting either.
Listening to these stories is Will's only chance to truly understand his father. Writing stories within stories means being extremely deliberate. A reader should understand which story is happening when, and why the stories are being laid out the way they are. Perhaps frame narratives are loved by storytellers because by their very nature they are about storytelling. Stories abound in our lives, and so why shouldn't they be in our films? Frame narratives begin with a skillful screenplay. Start writing using StudioBinder's pre-production software, which will let you do everything from script to storyboard and more. And with that, our story within a story is complete.